Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of our Slow Food Leaders Summit. We're really excited to have you here in the middle of a Saturday with us talking about events. I know we just had an incredible session with the policy team talking about the Farm Bill. Hopefully you're inspired to be involved with advocacy this year. At the very least, I think we're going to have a lot of slow food events happening this year. And one of the main things that was requested on the leader reports, the chapter reports last year, was a session about how to host a really good event and how to make it a very slow food event. So we came together with some leaders. It's the sessions that bring the voices of the network directly to you are the best ones. I think, you know, you can hear it directly from folks on the ground that are working, doing the slow food thing, just like you, will be the best people to talk to about these kinds of things. So we're gonna, we have some really amazing people here from the network. We are going to introduce them as we go. But we are going to present today sessions or events from small to really large events, and then try and give you a scope of things to think about when you're planning your event. And then we'll talk at the end about some opportunities coming up this year with programming from the national office and the international, Slow Food International, that might inspire you to do some programming this year as we start coming out of the pandemic and gathering. We unveiled the theme yesterday, which is all about connecting our foodways with our community. So we're all connecting again, we're gathering, we're doing things together. So hopefully you'll be inspired by all of these leaders and their amazing programs that they've done over the past year at least. So these were all happened this past year, and some are recurring events. So all right, without further ado, welcome to Setting a Welcoming Table with Purpose, Ingredients for Great Slow Food Events. All of these sessions from the Leader Summit are going to be recorded. We're recording right now, and they'll be posted on the Slow Food USA YouTube channel within 48 hours is what Brian told us. So you can definitely have access after this event. I like to start with a good quote. Quotes are inspirational. The amazing Gloria Steinem has said, "Without leaps of imagination or dreaming, we lose the excitement of possibilities. Dreaming, after all, is a form of planning." So hopefully this is a dream space for us. We can start thinking about all the possibilities out there and what we're inspired to do in the slow food realm. As I mentioned, I wanted to give y'all some ingredients for a successful slow food event. As you know, I've been a chapter leader in the past. I've been a regional leader. I've hosted everything from tiny potlucks to regional gatherings and been involved with planning for giant events. And I find that there's always certain categories of things to really think about when you start planning an event. There's seven that I always think about. The first is the theme. What's our theme? The second is the audience. The third is the purpose. The fourth is the call to action, and we'll go through these just a little bit here. But some examples of some themes. The theme for the year: nourishing our culinary connections, biodiversity, education, and advocacy. Those three things are the pillars that Slow Food International has put out for us. So those are themes. National campaigns like the Plant a Seed campaign, any sort of policy things that we might put out. International campaigns like the Regeneration Toolkit that got mentioned yesterday. Also, Slow Wine is a big international campaign, and Terra Madre, of course. Disco Soup is another one that I know will get mentioned today. Obviously, you can always double down on good, clean, and fair as your theme. Do Slow Food 101 events to bring in new members. And in particular, this year, we've got a lot of Slow Fish and Arc of Taste activations happening. So those could be your thematics as you start thinking, what do we want to do as a chapter, as a community? What's our theme? And then obviously the audience, who are we catering to? Our general public, our members, our local members, Snail of Approval awardees, chefs, students, school gardens. you're probably all recognizing all of these potential partners and audience members. And what's the purpose? Are you trying to do a fundraising event? Are you trying to raise awareness, like with certain like policy call to actions and things like that? Are you raising awareness about biodiversity? These are things that you can think about. Are you trying to increase your membership? And are you trying to highlight a collaboration that you really want to shine a light on? And then, of course, calls to action. Are we learning? Are we growing, cooking? Are we engaging? Are we joining something else? Are we joining a coalition? What is the call to action that you want people to walk away with at the end of the day? We did a lot of this thought process for some of our slow fish events, the rising tide events. We have a lot of calls to action for that. Like, we want people to, for example, at the end of these events that we do, we want them to ask questions. We want them to ask questions of their fishmongers. We want to have them dig deeper. So we provide some guidance in that. So these are just some things to think about. I've got a few more here. I always think about who the partners are. We're going to hear that from our panelists today about, who they partner with, how do they strengthen their events by having strong partners. These can be anyone from chefs to schools to local businesses, of course. Again, your Snail of Approval awardees, your farmers markets, chapters that are near you that are doing similar work. Maybe you want to buddy up and partner and have a larger event or an event with greater impact. Obviously, you have to think about a location that goes along with the scope and your audience. We'll hear about some potluck events that are happen in their homes or in their backyards, to partnering with restaurants and farmers markets, to being at a school garden or at a farm, or maybe this is something a partner of yours can offer as a venue. These are things I always think about. And then there's the logistics piece, creating your team, having a checklist for day of and for planning. What are you going to use for a ticketing platform? Do you need one? Obviously, the question of insurance always comes up. I'm sure our speakers will talk about that. Access to liability waiver, photo authorization, and then what's your social media plan for your event? How are you going to get the word out and share and help uplift your partners and that kind of thing? So these are the ingredients that I just wanted to put those out there at the very beginning. Not every ingredient is going to be used for every event, but these are the sort of the nuts and bolts. I'm going to create a doc at the end of this session that will be available to you to sort of craft your own checklists for event planning. So you'll see this again. I just wanted to show it to you in a kind of a snazzy slide format, just to sort of get the wheels turning as we start to talk with our panelists here. All right. So I want to introduce Francesca Arato. She's the board co-chair for Slow Food Vermont. She's going to talk to us today about smaller events and events with participants up to about 50 folks. So Francesca, you want to take it away?
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Mara was saying, my name is Francesca. I am part of Slow Food Vermont, and today I will talk to you on, how to organize a small event. I remember the first time I had to organize an event, I was pretty new also to Vermont. So, I didn't have a ton of connection in the state. So the first thing I was like, how am I going to even start? What am I going to do? And the first thing that I really recommend everyone is to really look the resources that you have around you. And I know this may sound, kind of like obvious, but, for me, the first resource was really the board, the Slow Food Vermont board, asking support to them first and getting all their, insights and the suggestions. And then working as a board to find, as Mara was saying before, a theme, the aim of these events. So what do we want to do? Why do we want to do these events? What do we want people to get out of these events? And so today I would like to just talk about a few small events that you can do in your chapter. No matter how big or small your board is, these events can be really organized even by a small board. I think it's something, you know, simple events to do. I start first by talking about tasting events. Tasting events are really events that in which we ask people to slow down, really rediscover the joy of eating, understanding the importance of caring, you know, about where their food come from, who makes it, how it's made. So that's you always have to have the aim behind your events. And speaking about the logistic, how to organize this event, is the how. First of all, am I gonna do this? How there are different ways in which you can or in which you can organize a tasting event. First of all, finding your products. Where am I gonna find these products that people are going to taste? And you can partner with some producers in your area that you know, or maybe they are maybe interested of partnering with you to showcase some of their products. You can also get in contact with your Snail of Approval awardees that are nearby you, that you know, can be there with you at the event, show their products during the evening. And this is really something, and then you may wonder, okay, what if no one can be there with me? And I cannot find any producer, no one is available that night in which I want to do this event. What am I going to do? There are other ways in which you can host a tasting event. Slow Food International provides a taste education kit. There is something that I really like is the sensory journey exercise, where you can discover, you know, with just some water and flavoring, you can ask people to discover sweet, sour, umami, salty, and bitter. It's very simple, and I'm going to put in the chat afterwards the guide that is provided, very simple to follow. And then, as Mara was saying, the location. Where am I going to do this event? So you can partner with your farmers market, or for example, in Vermont, we partner with a summer festival that, you know, allow us to set up a table and where people can come and taste the products. This is a quick interaction. People are not going to stand around for half an hour, you know, tasting the product. So it's an interaction that is, pretty quick. People come while they're visiting the event, and you want to provide them with, you know, information that are meaningful and they can bring home, and they, you know, they've learned something. Then another example of small events are classes. This is an example of a class that we did a few years ago. We taught people how to make fresh made pasta. And also this is, so what is now the aim of the event? We want to teach, the students, like the people attending the event, how to cook something, not only preparing it, but then to cooking and taste it. So you have the whole experience. This is also, speaking about the logistic, you will want to find a location. The locations, you know, they vary. It could be a community center that is in your area. It could be a library that is happy to host you. In this case, we actually partner with a local university. You know, this town in Vermont organized a university. They hosted many classes, and we were one of those classes. So there are many ways in which in your community you can find places that are happy to host you in your event. It's as Mara was saying before, it's very important also the exactly promoting the event. And yeah, thank you for moving the slide, Mara. That's perfect. Like promoting the event. The next event I wanted to talk about is the potlucks. This is really something that it can be a one person organizing the whole event. Of course, you know, having the support of your board, but potlucks are really a way to come together with people that may know about slow food or may not know about slow food. So how do you even involve these people? So it's very important to use your channels, in social media, post to really get people involved and invite them over to a potluck. The potluck is really a great way to really bring the slow food principle together, like sharing the food, learning about food that other people cooked. It's a good way to, you know, work on a theme. So once you put out a theme, you get all the people involved in this theme. It's also a good way to um, to make an event because it's so simple, you know, it's only one person can organize it. It can happen in many parts of your state. I speak about, you know, now Vermont. Vermont, you know, we're all spread out. So some board members are in the north part, some are in the south. So it is a good way where, you know, different board members at the same time can really target different areas of the state, because it's not that everyone is going to drive 3 hours for a potluck, you know, like people are attending. So it's very important to target different areas. And then, yeah, we can move to the next slide. The other thing that I really want to talk to you about is really making it simple on yourself. When you think about organizing an event, think about the partners that you can, the partners that can help you with your event. These are some pictures from the Disco Soup event. Of course, some chapters, maybe they do, you know, we saw a lot of participants. Last year, we had, you know, less than 50 participants. So it can be considered a small event. But the key here was really to find the right partners, people that have the same need that you have as a chapter. Like, you know, you want to organize a Disco Soup event. So first of all, you're using Slow Food International campaign, and this is already something that can help you. If you don't have an idea of what to do, you know, use one of those Slow Food International campaign like Disco Soup, and then find partners that have your same needs. In this case, we partner with local farmers that you know, they really, what they do is gleaning. So they collect all the products that is not collected during the year. So they take all these products that otherwise would go to waste, and then they donated it to us, to Slow Food. And then we partner with the Salvation Army, with this young guy, the Salvation Army, very enthusiastic, that wanted to provide some good food to the customers. We invited the local community to chop all the vegetables, playing some music. And so we because of this good partnership, you don't have to feel that you have all the weight on you to organize these events, but, you know, really collaborate with your partners. So this is my few cents on how to organize a small event. I wonder if there are any questions now or even afterwards.
Thank you so much, Francesca. This is great. I wanted to, since this is in my region and I've been participating with the Disco Soup for years, it was also an opportunity for us to partner with the local university chapter, because the Disco Soup initiative is something that Slow Food Youth Network Global is really pushing forward. So we were able to engage with our university chapter and get them involved. They brought the music to that particular event, which was really nice, and volunteers to help chop. So yeah, those multi-pronged partnerships are really great. Anyone have questions for Francesca before we move on? we'll provide some of these resources. I know Slow Food Vermont had a doc back in the day that I can dig up for sure. It was like how to host a slow food potluck series. So I'll make that available in the folder that I mentioned earlier. Amazing. Thank you so much, Francesca. As questions come in and you think of them as we keep moving, pop them in the chat and we'll get back to you guys. No problem. Amazing. I'm going to hand over the reins to Willow and Elsa out of Slow Food East Bay in California, talking about a little bit larger events between 50 and 200 plus attendees. Take it away, Willow.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here middle of the day on a Saturday. So I am going to talk a little bit about our bean feed. We had a really fun, essentially a street fair, celebrating beans that were coming out of the Plant a Seed program. And what we did is we took that as a campaign, and then we wanted to create an event essentially through the lens of Slow Food East Bay, thinking about our history and our history of events. We've generally focused on diverse participants and audiences, and that combination of joy and justice. And so kind of using the bean theme and doing our little spin on it, essentially. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the why of it, and then I'll get into the how, and then I'm going to finish a little bit with some analysis and reflection that might help people moving forward. So starting kind of first about the why, you know, our mission as Slow Food is so broad, and I think Francesca really noted this in her presentation as well. It's like when you're so broad, it's like, where do you start? When you can do anything, what do you choose to do? And so we really have been trying to dial that back and always trying to start with the why. Like, what's the purpose? Who do we want to benefit? And at the end of the day, what do you want people to be thinking about, and what do you want them to be doing as they walk away? And this is complicated and takes intention. And for us, this was going to be our first event back, our first in-person, larger scale in-person event back post-COVID. We had done some small potlucks, but because it was going to be the first event, we wanted to try and make it as streamlined and easy as possible, but also impactful. And so we did a few things in order to get there. We leveraged the Slow Food USA campaign that made it really easy. There was already graphics, there was already a topic. We worked with community partners and existing structures for events, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we used our mission statement, or our statement of values, to center us. So I think that Mara is going to share the link to our statement of values. This was something that we worked on with the leadership, the great leadership of Elsa, who is from our board here, who's also joining us today. She led us on some reflection and a process of really turning inward and thinking about, as a chapter, who we were, why we were doing what we were doing, how we were doing it, and who we saw as our audience. So that kind of took this larger scale, good, clean, and fair food for all, and it took it down to, what does that mean specifically for Slow Food East Bay? And so that's making it easier and easier for us to do our events, because we know what the lens is that we want to be working through all the time. So a couple of things I just wanted to note about our statement of values. One of the things that we decided was that we really wanted to highlight the good in the good, clean, and fair food for all. That good is a really great entry point for people. You know, if people are a little bit afraid or they want to learn something, if you can draw them in with deliciousness and joy and fun, then once they're in the door, you can start to talk to them about the clean and the fair and the for all pieces. But sometimes those things can be barriers if people are new to the slow food movement, or they're new to food justice or sustainable food systems. Starting with that good just feels, and it feels very inherently slow food, at least to us. And then the second point was, we are an incredibly diverse chapter, both from a racial standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, and also from a geographical standpoint. We range over a very large area of the East Bay, and it incorporates a lot of people and a lot of different ecosystems. So we want to always make sure that our events represent that. The third is how do we make sure that these feel inclusive and that engagement is easy? And one of the ways that we did that was through a sliding scale ticketing model, again, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then another part of our statement or of our mission is to always be fostering connections and thinking about networks. Because we as Slow Food, because we're at this kind of 10,000 foot view, we can see all these people doing different things. So how we can kind of see where the holes are or where connections or relationships might be able to happen. So always making sure that our events do that. And then the fourth or the fifth piece that I wanted to just make sure that that I spoke about was committing to paying fair wages and honoring our participants' time and energy, especially if we're going to be reaching out to a really diverse level of participants. Some people might be new in their businesses, or they don't have funding, that they're coming from a place where they can't donate their time or their product. So how do we design our events so that we can commit to paying people for their time and energy? So I'm going to have you go to the third slide. So I mentioned in that last piece, diversity. Diversity is so important to us, recognizing the broad spectrum of people in our food system and how do we always create inclusive and equitable spaces. And obviously that's something that's hard when you don't have a lot of money. You know, in the past, what we've been doing is through grant writing and other small scale fundraising, we're always trying to kind of keep some money coming in so that when we have an idea for an event, that we're not scrambling at the last minute to try and raise funds for that event. This event in particular, normally our goal for events is to break even. Like, we really don't take anything. We pay for whatever the expenses are, and then we split the proceeds. Usually in the past, some of our larger scale events, we would split it between a chef and a partnering nonprofit. So the money would go to them. So we walk away with nothing. We walk away with a lot because we've made some really good relationships and we've built a lot of trust. And I think that's really important. So generally our goal is to break even. This event, we walked into it knowing we would lose money because it was our first event back post-COVID. We had some leftover money from some other grants. So we went into it setting ticket prices very, very low so that anyone who wanted to walk in the door could do it. And then we reached out to a lot of chefs and chef participants that had not done events like this in the past. So we gave them a lot of help and we made sure that they had the money to do it. So that's something that is just, for us, is a main tenet of the way we want to build relationships and build trust in our community. So then I'll have you go to the next slide. And I'll talk through a little bit about logistics. So we took the idea of the bean feed, first of all, or we took the idea of the beans, and there used to be something in Sonora, I believe, in the Central Valley of California. One man would have a bean feed every fall, where it was just big vats of beans, and anyone who wanted them could come and come and get a bowl. So we wanted it to kind of feel that way, really feel like a community event. Like, how do you get people involved? So we partnered with a local winery region. There's 4 or 5 wineries in this one area, and they've been doing these First Friday events. So they already had the structure in place to shut down the street. They knew how to work with the city. So we went to them and basically proposed doing that same thing, except instead of on a Friday, doing it on a Sunday. So we were able to leverage their experience, their relationships with the city of Berkeley, so that we knew how to move through the process. So that was in terms of finding a location and finding a venue. And then in order to find chef participants, we reached out to people that we had worked with in the past and asked them either to participate or if they had suggestions for other people. And then through some of the relationships that we had begun to develop through social media, through amplification and outreach on behalf of other people. So we had already built relationships that way with them. So then we asked them to be a part of this. And we fleshed it out with a couple of local nonprofits that were working, nonprofit working on food waste that we had worked with in the past, as well as the wineries, and then a farm that we had worked with in the past. So that's how we kind of figured out who would be participating, and that created some structure. In terms of the like specific logistics, we carry event insurance that we just renew every year. And I can't remember the exact company right now, but I can certainly share it if people are interested. For ticketing, we use Eventbrite. They give us a nonprofit discount. It means that we earn just it's the fee that they charge is a little less. So you can get registered with them as a nonprofit. And in terms of liability and photo authorization, we include that as part of the ticket. So when somebody goes to purchase the ticket, they have to click 2 boxes. One is that they absolve us of liability, that people understand that this is an event, it's outside, they could trip on the sidewalk and it's not our fault. And we also, then we also have a photo authorization on there where people have to actually check a box that says, yes, I'm okay with you taking my photo. And if people don't check it, we just reach out to them individually and just kind of share with them what we're going to do with the photos. And oftentimes they just have forgotten to check the box, or once they understand what we're using it for, they're fine with it. I've never had any pushback from anybody. And then in terms of our outreach, the way that we get the word out, we have an email newsletter that goes out every month. And I think we have nearly a little over 1,600 people on that listserv. And then we are also sharing through Instagram and Facebook. Those are the only 2 social media that we are on. And then we, as our board, leveraged all of our relationships. So any organizations that we're part of, listservs that we are on, we just encourage people to share it through our personal networks. And then making sure that all of our partners, and at this point we had a lot of partners because we had 6 chefs, we had 3 wineries, we had a farm, and we had 2 nonprofits. So making sure that they had essentially sharing toolkits, whether that was logos, whether that was language, whether that was ready-made graphics, that they could share very, very easily. So making sure that that sharing could happen. And we did a little bit of coordinating to make sure that people were sharing. We tried to have an ask of people sharing a certain number of times before the event, and that helped to build up kind of more public knowledge of it. And then volunteers, as we all know, I mean, we on the board are all volunteers, but you can't run these large scale events without volunteers. We use Sign Up Genius for our volunteer signups, and we set different shifts ahead of time so that people, and we tried not to have shifts longer than 2 or 3 hours, because we wanted people to know that they could come and do a little bit of work and also enjoy the event itself. Like, we didn't want people to have to work for the entire time. So we were spreading volunteers throughout the entire venue. And then once people arrived at the event, so they knew how to move through the event, we created what we called a ticket. And that's what you're seeing on the left and the right of your screen. The front part of a ticket was a map of what the area, where all the different chefs were, where the different nonprofits. We also had games. We had things like beanbag tosses and guess how many beans in the jar, and then all sorts of questions. We were having people write on large pieces of paper, like what their favorite bean was, what was their first bean memory. So trying to find ways to get people engaged. So there was a map on the front, and then on the back was a list of each of the chefs with their dishes. Because the way that we structured it is that your ticket got you 1 dish from each of the 6 chefs. So we didn't want it to be kind of mass chaos, like people coming up and grabbing. We wanted people to be able to walk up and have it be calm enough that they could interact with the volunteer that was there, interact with the chef for a moment, so that So when somebody went up to get their dish, the volunteer checked off that they had gotten that dish. So it was both, it kept us from people grabbing too many of one dish and then not having enough, but it also, for some people, is like a sense of accomplishment. Like, look, I got all 6 dishes, and they could talk to the person next to them, like, well, which one did you have? Which one did I have? So that was on the back. And then at the very bottom of it was a truncated version of our mission statement. So it was a way to engage people on the why, going back to the purpose, like, why are we here and what are we doing? Last few kind of logistics things, we made up these little bean cards, which are in the center. So we had a bean display. So we had small cards that explained the bean, where it was from, a little bit of history. And then at each of the chef's tables, they had a flyer on their table that had their name and a little bit about them, as well as their dish with ingredients. And then we've had each of the wineries have suggested wine pairings for each of the dishes. So if people chose to do that, they knew what they should be, you know, in an having with their dish. So that was a nice, again, another way to kind of interact and draw all of our participants together as well. All of our on-site signage that was spread out all around, we had QR codes everywhere for donating, and our donation platform right now, we're using Give Lively. And then QR codes for joining Slow Food USA, and then for walk-in tickets, and allowing people to do both Venmo and PayPal. So we are using QR codes for all of that. So you can go ahead and go to that next slide. And I mentioned this a little bit, just in terms of how do you make and Francesca also addressed this, like, how do you make something an easy lift? Because we're all 100% volunteers. And this idea of leveraging what Slow Food USA and Slow Food International either are doing for campaigns or the resources that they have available, whether that's a tasting kit or whether that's broader campaigns, like using those, since we have a limited capacity to be totally creative on our own. And then I mentioned that these wineries have this First Friday structure that we use. Oakland Bloom is a chef incubator that we've worked with our Cultural Food Traditions Project dinners in the past. So we worked with them. And then both Marquita Farm and Food Ship were previous community partners. So again, because we wanted this to be as easy of a lift as possible, because it was a large scale event and the first one back, we really tried to kind of double down on these sorts of relationships. And one of the nice things that came out of this, in going back to the networking and creating, fostering connections, since Oakland Bloom, we introduced them at this event to the wineries. Now those small scale immigrant chefs are being tapped for the First Fridays that are happening. So I just went to the First Friday that happened last week, and 2 of the Oakland Bloom chefs, different ones than we participated with, different chefs were there at First Friday. So they are opening up to a whole different audience than they might have had at their smaller events that were happening in Oakland or East Oakland, because they were in Berkeley. It's just a different crowd. So they were getting a much broader outreach, which just felt good that we fostered that. So I just wanted to put that through. So then these are just a few of the photographs from some of our participants, some of the people that were doing things, to some of our chefs and our wineries. And I think Mara was going to link in the chat, if people are interested in seeing some more photos. You can, there's the Google Drive for the Google Photos, and then we made a great video that was shared on all of our social media afterward. So just wanted to mention a win, a challenge, and what I see as a fail or a extra special challenge. In terms of a win, you know, again, that leveraging of slow food, I felt like we did very well at paring down so many options to a smaller option, not reinventing the wheel, paying attention to the global movement and the broader movement, you know, supporting national, but leveraging our local assets and knowing that we have limited capacity. And I felt like that was a real win. We had over 200 people there, so I feel like we affected a lot with not a lot of work. In terms of a challenge, sourcing beans was definitely a challenge. This is something I'm actually working on, pitching a story to our local edible, because surprisingly, or not surprisingly, finding beans that are rare is kind of hard. If I probably made, I don't know, tens and tens and tens of phone calls and hundreds of emails to various organizations and farmers, and cold calling people at farmers markets, trying to find enough beans that each of our chefs could make 200 dishes. So that was definitely a challenge, and we ended up only being able to source 5 of the 6 beans to have enough of the beans for the chefs to use. We were able, thanks to Mara, to also get some of the Hank's extra special beans, but that was just a small enough amount that we could just share them with people and share them with local feed libraries. So we didn't actually use them to cook a dish that day. The one regret that we have from the event, our DJs forgot to bring a microphone. So normally, it's always been really important to us that there's a drawing together movement or drawing together moment. So no matter how large our event is, that there's a moment where everyone's quiet and we're thinking about why we're here, and we're learning a little bit about slow food and the broader movement of slow food and where we're going when we talk about good, clean, and fair food for all. And so not having that ability just felt like, oh, is this just feel like a kind of just a fun street fair, which is great. It should be fun, but we also never got the chance to really share the mission or to have that ask. Like, there was no call to action, because the idea was to have that call to action be verbal rather than it be, I mean, certainly listed everywhere was eat more beans, and beans are so important, and support your local producers, but we never got that kind of deeper connection where you're really looking at people and you're asking them to listen. So we did it in a follow-up email, but that was something that in the future, knowing that your DJs might forget the microphone, so thinking of another way of, always thinking about what could go wrong. And so making sure that you're ahead of that. So that was kind of my share, and I'd love to any questions from people. I know I saw some start to come in as we were talking. I know there was one about the liability and the event insurance. Those are the same. I'm using event insurance, but also meaning liability insurance. And then other than that, I didn't see what others were.
There was one more question from Fernando. The question is, what pre and post opportunities, if any, were made available to Slow Food East Bay member community at large? Markets, restaurants, wineries that could participate in menus, stocking of featured items in markets.
We didn't specifically do anything pre or post. And I guess I'm trying to understand the question. I think that we had thought about reaching out to some local restaurants and trying to encourage them to have a bean dish on the menu or something at the same time that this was happening, but just it didn't quite work out in terms of timing, in terms of our capacity to do both. I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly. I don't know, Fernando, if you wanted, or Elsa, if you wanted to chime in, I'd love that.
No, I think it'd be good to get clarification, but I don't know if this is related, but you may want to talk about the miso as well.
Yeah. I could. One of the offshoot projects that's come out of this, because we wanted to not have just this one-off event. We were looking for something a little longer term. We reached out to a local miso company, and we are in the process now of a collaboration miso. So we provided them with the Santa Maria Pinquito bean, which was the California bean that was on the Plant a Seed campaign. And they are in the process of making a miso that will be available for sale to the public later in the fall. So of course, when I first proposed it to them last summer, I of course know nothing about how long miso takes or how they organize their calendars. So of course, when I first reached out to them last summer, I thought, oh, it'll be in time for the bean feed, and that was not going to happen. So we delivered the beans. We bought the beans locally from Rancho Gordo, and we delivered them to them. I actually met them on New Year's Eve and delivered them 100 pounds of beans. And that is now all gone into fermentation. So a couple of our board members went and helped with the process of fermenting them, and they are packed away in barrels. And then at the end of August, those things will come out of barrels and put into jars, and the Santa Maria miso will be available to the public, and it will be a co-sponsorship or a collaboration. So it'll have our logo on the, or it'll say something about Slow Food on the label. And then we plan on having some collaborative events, both a launch party and then working with probably 5 local restaurants, and they will feature the miso in a dish on their menu for the entire month of September. And our ask is a certain percentage of the proceeds of that dish to be donated back to Slow Food East Bay. And then Shared Cultures, which is the name of the miso company, they are giving 10% of net profits of each jar back to us. So that's a larger project that come out of that.
Amazing. We have another question from Denisa.
Mhm.
Do you see that?
I do see that. Thanks for the question, Denisa. I agree. I think partnerships are something that are built very slowly over time. And I think that for us, it really started back in 2017 when we started to imagine our cultural food traditions project dinners, and really doing the hard work of reaching out to small scale chefs and home cooks, and specifically people who are immigrants or refugees that have come to our area, and reaching out first often through local nonprofits that worked with recent arrivals. So people who worked on housing or economics or job opportunities, and just asking if they had people in their community that wanted to share their voice and share their story. And then we would do all of the structure around it. So all they had to do was show up and cook their food and sit in conversation with me. So trying to make it really easy for them. And kind of all along the way, making sure that they were always paid, making sure that we let them lead the conversations, that we were putting ourselves in service to them rather than trying to guide the conversations. I think some of that it can be tricky, and you need to, especially coming from an organization like Slow Food, which has the image of being very elitist, being a little bougie, having historically been white run, been very Eurocentric, that you're always kind of having to build an alternative dialogue, something that is different, that we're building off of that, but that we're trying to change that language. I think that hopefully that helps. In terms of working with the Ohlone, our very, very first cultural food traditions project dinner, because we did 11 of them over 13 months, because we knew we were starting the conversation talking about immigrants and refugees. We wanted to start first being where we are, and the people that have had to immigrate or been forced to leave because of us being on the land that we are on. So our first event was featuring Crystal Wapepa of Wapepa's Kitchen, and she is not Ohlone, but she is married to a Pomo, and I'm trying to remember now, I'm having a little bit of a space cadet moment. She's originally from Oklahoma, and somebody, Kickapoo. Thank you, Denisa. Thank you. But she is Kickapoo. She's been out here for a long time. She's married to a Pomo man, and she lives on Ohlone land. So she really tries to incorporate all of that. And our nonprofit that we worked with for that event was the Segorite Land Trust, which is a group of women that are trying to rematriate the land, where they're buying or they're being gifted back land from the city and from individual landowners in order to recreate a food system for themselves. So we kind of wanted that foundation, that we were starting there with the people who've been here forever, and then talking about the people who have come in. So that's an example of the local work that we've done.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Willow and
Yeah,
Elsa.
yeah.
This is so inspiring, and like it in my wildest dreams, when I was imagining the bean suppers, I was like, something like this, and then you guys really took it and ran with it and made it your own, and that was always the goal. And I just am so impressed. So impressed with how you were able to leverage all of your partnerships and keep that workload really distributed, and also just pull off a really beautiful event with partners that keep on growing. I mean, that's the goal. So awesome, beautiful job. And thank you so much for being generous with all your resources. We are sharing the doc and sharing your various reels and photos and things. Thank you so much. I might circle back with you later to get some of those platforms that you mentioned and create a doc at the end of this whole event. Amazing. Willow might have to step off here from this session, so Elsa will be available for more questions if some percolate as we carry on with our session here. Thank you so much. Slow Food East Bay. We're gonna move out into the Pacific. Lori Carlson, who is a regional counselor and a longtime Slow Food Oahu chapter leader, helped to put on this amazing banana festival this past year, one of hopefully many. I'm just going to let you take it away, Lori.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me, and thanks for participating, everyone. And congratulations, Willow and East Bay. What a great event you put together. Really fabulous. I'm impressed. I learned some things. Well, I want to say this banana festival really came from the roots of our connections in our community. We've been doing some seed exchanges up on the North Shore of Oahu, and we've been partnering with the Waimea Valley organization, which is actually owned by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And we've been doing our seed exchanges up there on the North Shore. So we started, in a way, developing that relationship on a much smaller scale than this banana festival. In addition to those folks, we also have a farmer up there who is kind of revolutionizing biodiversity and bananas here in Hawaii. And he's, I call him the banana boy. I'm not sure he cares for that, but he is amazing. And he is growing many different kinds of bananas. He has many banana plants to distribute. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of bananas, so he's an incredible resource. So those two organizations, the Hawaii Banana Source, which is Gabe Satcher-Smith, the banana farmer, and Waimea Valley were really cornerstones of pulling this together. In addition to that, I've been working with a friend who is involved in Hawaii Seed. And some time ago, we got a grant for biodiversity of banana plants. And we've been promoting Hawaiian, what we call canoe plant bananas, which are the ones that were brought by the Polynesians some centuries ago. So those pieces really came together in terms of the partnerships. Mara, maybe we can have the next slide there. So as I mentioned, Waimea Valley was really our cornerstone event venue, and they've been very generous and very kind to us over the years. But this was a big ask, and I think they really stepped up to it. Again, the Hawaii Seed, the small grant that we had, my friend that was there, we were co-partners in developing this festival. And again, talking to Gabe regularly, getting his input on what was doable in terms of the bananas he had available, the bananas we had for sampling. And of course, we paid all our farmers for the bananas that we got for the festival. That we thought that was really an important thing to do. Next slide. We had a whole slew of secondary partnerships that we built around the initial idea of having this banana festival. Kim Johnson and Jack Johnson live on the North Shore of Oahu. They have a foundation that does a lot of things that are related to slow food. They have, in fact, done a lot of education with children. They have good access to volunteers. They offered us up a bunch of canvas bags that we could use for our banana stamping. We talked to the master gardeners at the University of Hawaii and got them to bring in someone who would be a plant doctor. So it could be more of an agricultural backyard gardening event. We also approached various farmers. We had a goat dairy involved. We had a variety of folks coming to display their talents and their products. The gentleman in the slide is weaving lauhala, which is customarily used for making mats in the Pacific. It turns out that banana fiber was used traditionally, the black banana was used traditionally in the weaving of lauhala. So we had them come in and show their stuff and show us the banana fibers. We brought the beekeepers in, so we had bee honey tasting going on. More community volunteers from the North Shore who've been participants in our events for seed sharing. And we had a variety of other knowledgeable experts in various areas come in. And it's kind of nice that we started this process, probably, I think our grant was 5 or 6 years ago. We've been able to build on it. We had chefs who've been Terra Madre delegates who've gone to Italy, who have a connection with Slow Food because of that, and also farmers of the same ilk. Next slide. We put together, you'll see this little book, How to Eat a Banana. We really think it's important for people to see bananas not just as a dessert item, even though it is a good, healthy fast food item. We wanted to kind of stretch their perception of bananas and make them understand that bananas are used in a lot of different ways in cultures throughout the world. Many of those cultures are resident here in Hawaii. So we pulled this little book together and gave it out. I think we had 500 copies that evaporated very quickly as people seized them. In addition to that, Gabe brought 280 banana plants of different types. So he was set up to sell banana plants. He also had an amazing display of banana fruits and flowers, which is pretty phenomenal. We had probably 10 different varieties of bananas for tasting, so people could get an idea of the diversity of bananas, which is something that's not just being lost elsewhere, but has been lost a lot in Hawaii, and we really want people to expand their idea of different kinds of bananas. We tried to get our chefs to emphasize savory dishes instead of sweet dishes. In addition to that, we had a couple of speakers. Gabe is a very good speaker, and he talked about the diversity and the culture and the history of bananas, as well as the best way to grow a banana. So we wanted to get people to cook bananas differently, to take a banana maybe they were familiar with or one that they weren't familiar with and grow it in their backyard. And the North Shore is a good place to do this because it's not as urban as Honolulu. So people are more likely to have backyards where they can plant a banana and get it going. In addition, we had festival t-shirts, which featured this little graphic that you'll see here, which we thought was nice. It was from the turn of the century. It's totally botanically incorrect, but it's a beautiful image, and I think people really loved it. We almost sold out of the t-shirts that we produced for that. There's a woman who has produced probably a 2-pound book on banana biodiversity here in Hawaii. And we had, I think it's an $80 book. I think it's like over $100 on eBay, but we had maybe 10 copies of it, which sold very quickly. The people seem to be upping their interest in bananas island-wide, but particularly the people that came to this festival. One of the tricky things about the festival for us was we really didn't know how many people would show up because it was a first-time event. We were a little concerned that not enough would show up. We thought maybe 500 people would show up, but we think it was really over 1,500 people. And it was a little shocking to us. And we were a little taken aback by the surge of crowd at the front coming into this event. But once people got in, they seemed happy. They were enjoying themselves. They enjoyed all of the samples. They loved seeing all the different types of bananas and the banana flowers. They loved these little recipe books. So even though we were a little overwhelmed and we were running out of food here and there, by and large, it went really well. And I think this really lays the footwork for next year when we'll know a lot more about how many people to expect and how to manage the crowds. We also made this a free festival this year because we had the grant money to use, but I think we're going to have to charge something for it next year, try and make it a minimal kind of charge so we still get large amounts of people there enjoying this festival. Just for fun, I want you to see this beautiful banana flower in the front, which is from Yunnan, which is pretty extraordinary. This is the kind of material that Gabe, who's behind the banana flower over here, has great access to. So we had to pay for some things in this. And as I said, paying the farmers for the bananas was an important thing. We obviously had to pay for the t-shirts and the purchase. We had to pay for banners and signs. We had a videographer who recorded Gabe's talk on bananas. We also had some design work done for the cookbooks, the t-shirts, the posters. So those were things that we really had to spring for and felt good about. The next time around, we're going to have to find a way to get some revenue to cover the costs that we produced with this. But I think that's really what made it a very solid event. Next slide. We had lots of different venues for our publicity. We used a North Shore newspaper that is well received in the North Shore. We got something in the Daily in Honolulu. We had the Honolulu Magazine did a story for the weekend feature, what was up this weekend. We also partnered with a lot of different agencies, which I think was very helpful. The Master Gardeners put out a notice and also helped us ask for volunteers. We got the UH School of Tropical Ag to put a note in their newsletter. We also have connections with the State Department of Agriculture, and they put out regular event postings and spread information. There's a Botanical Garden Association. They also put things out for us. So that, in addition to social media, Eventbrite, our newsletter, Instagram, we also asked some of our chefs that have popular social media content to put some notes out for us as well. Next slide. So next time around, we'll be doing probably a modest admission fee, maybe $5. We did sell the t-shirts. We had blank t-shirts that we used for the banana printing. You can see a happy banana stamper there who's done a beautiful job on her banana shirt. We also sold quite a bit of slow food swag while we were there, which was nice to see. And I think next time around, we may well sell booth space to some of our producers on the North Shore. Our goat farm lady had a really successful day. I think she said it was, she did as well as she's done at any farmer's market. And I think there's other people like that, probably honey sellers, things that maybe not directly tied to bananas, but will be representative of the North Shore's agricultural profile. And I think what we may do next time is simply have a small charge, maybe for each of the different food tastings, maybe something like $10 to get 3 or 4 food tastings from the chefs that we have invited, in addition to a modest entry fee. That way, if someone wants those, they can purchase them, and if not, not. But there are other events and other booths that they can participate in without having to do the tastings if that's not what they're really there for. Next slide. Okay, I think that's about it. Just to say, it was a little overwhelming. I think the next time around, we're really going to focus a little bit on having more time to prepare. One of the things that impacted us was that the venue was being used for church service before we got there. So we didn't have as much time as we needed to get set up, which was frustrating for us. We didn't have that moment of calm before everything went crazy. And people did rush the gate and came in early. So I guess we're going to have to beef up. I don't know what exactly we'll do, but we'll definitely have something up front to keep people at bay for a while until we can really get truly organized. But by and large, it was a lot of fun. I feel good about it. I think right now there's a certain euphoric high that comes with being at a public event post-COVID. And I think a lot of people really appreciated that. So any questions, comments?
So amazing, Lori. I really appreciate this opportunity to hear more about the banana event. Lori did write a blog post for Slow Food USA that is on our website if you want to dig deep on some of the details and see some of these pictures again. But I love all the multi-sensory engagement that you had. I mean, from the tasting and the eating to the learning to the stamping, like these banana stamps are so inspiring. I love all of it. What a great way to engage with the community. I was thinking maybe some of the banana snacks or banana tasting could be outside the gates while people are coming in.
keep them busy.
Yeah, give people some snacks.
Yeah.
Dion, were there any questions for Lori in the chat?
The main question that came up is how often this event happened, and I believe you answered it if it was an annual event. But if you want to clarify, that would be awesome.
Sure. This was our very first. We really wanted to do this before COVID struck. And it was very frustrating for us to have to wait out the 2 or 3 years before we could do it. But now that we've launched it, we have a lot more information. We're going to go forward. I'm just about to head up to Waimea this week and go talk to them about dates and try and find a date where there's nothing scheduled before us. So we have plenty of time to get everything organized. So I think we're going to try and make it an annual event and probably target, I'd like to have a little earlier in the year, maybe October. Probably there'll be more bananas available a little earlier, not quite in midwinter like November is for us here. A little earlier in the season, I think there'll be more available and more biodiversity can be just displayed and tasted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that was really cool is that there's some bananas on the Arc of Taste that were also featured at this festival. So it was an opportunity to share some very slow food flagship, programming as well with the public, which, a lot of times the public doesn't engage directly with the Arc of Taste. So I really
it was particularly nice. I think a lot of people are not aware of the fact that there are probably 30 varieties of bananas that were brought here when Polynesians sailed from Tahiti and the Marquesas to Hawaii. We talk about canoe plants frequently, but we don't talk about banana canoe plants. And I think the other thing that's happened here in Hawaii is there's a nasty virus that has been killing bananas and there's no cure for it. But if, the fact that Gabe, who knows a lot about all this, continues to persist, shows us that it's not, you shouldn't give up on bananas because your plants might be attacked, but you need to keep sharing and diversifying and giving people banana plants from your backyard and kind of making it a community effort to overcome this virus by being persistent and replanting. And I think that was an important message too.
awesome.
There is one more question from Renee, mentioning that the Bay Area chapter mentioned grants and you, Lori, mentioned that Hawaii received grants too.
Yeah.
Are there any national grants or ideas on where a chapter can apply for this sort of grant funding?
I think it's probably worth checking with your local community foundation. Our grant was a very local grant maker, and they were very interested in very local activities. I think that would be a good place to go. Probably national is good too. And I know there's a lot of small grants. I think someone just said something about, what was it, Annie's, which is a brand of natural foods. I think they give out very small grants. So, it's sort of expanded, it's an expanded universe. I think there's more than just the traditional local community foundations. There are different kinds of food corporations in particular that I think give out grants for small projects and various kinds of activities. Willow, do you have other things to contribute?
Yeah, Willow's actually dropped off the call.
She's gone.
now,
Okay.
and as part of the East Bay chapter.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share a little bit of our experience. First of all, Lori, I think it's a great reminder about, kind of companies and, that give grants. I think kind of it's great to check in with the USA side, because a lot of times companies there may be some where they reward at a larger level versus a local level. It's kind of what we ran into a couple times, like with, for example, Cliff Family Estates, who is a local, they're based in the Sonoma, kind of area. So that's really, I mean, I think we found that the national side has been really helpful in helping us navigate some of those kind of conversations. But I agree with you in terms of a lot of local. We find it's really through the relationships that we find out about, grant opportunities. And so we haven't, the bean feed wasn't specifically tied to a grant, but, we have, for example, one of the board members we have, he is one of the farmers market organizer or managers, for the local Berkeley farmers market. So he was aware of some grants that we're in the process of looking at now. We've also, through CAF, which is the California Farmers Association, they had a grant where it was actually part of another project we had, which is called the Sister Farms, where we co-wrote the grant. So I think it's just really keeping eyes open and just asking the questions and, having the posture. And maybe there's an opportunity, Mara, from a national basis that we could share database, of knowledge, but yeah, I wish there was a more kind of place where we found a lot of it, but again, it's just a lot of kind of local relationships and keeping our eyes open that we've been made aware of these opportunities.
That's awesome, Elsa. Thank you for mentioning fundraising in general and grant opportunities, maybe database. Our development manager, Patricia, is going to be giving a talk tomorrow about fundraising and friend-raising, basically talking about those relationships and how they really help with all the fundraising efforts and where you find funds. So yeah, we're thinking about those things too and connecting y'all to the right resources. So yeah, as much as we can amalgamate our various resources, the better for all of us. Thank you so much, Lori, and thanks for all the great questions. As questions come to you, keep putting them in the chat. It seems like we're doing a great job getting them answered and crowdsourcing some answers as well. Let's move on to our the largest event that I know of in the Slow Food Network. Scott Steen from the Slow Food Tetons has been putting this on for a little while. I think he's, I can't wait to hear all about it. I've never heard him talk about it directly. So we're really excited to have you here, Scott, to talk about events that are very large, between 2,000 and 3,000 plus participants. Take it away.
Thank you, Mara. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Steen with Slow Food in the Tetons. I'll echo what you all have been saying. It's so inspiring to hear about other chapters and all the amazing events that are happening. I've been taking notes this whole time, so it's great to be here. So we are in Jackson, Wyoming, our chapter, and we have held this event called the Farm to Fork Festival. This will be the one, we've done 4 of them, so this will be our 5th year, and it happens the first weekend in October. And what it is a culmination of all the different programs and work that we do at Slow Food and the Tetons into one big 2 or 2.5 day event. And the theme, well, I'll start by saying the purpose of the event is really twofold. It's a celebration of what we can grow here up in the high mountains, Teton area cuisine. There's lots of active farming and ranching going on here, and there's a lot of hunting as well. And folks often think that you can't grow anything up here in the mountains, but you can, even though it's freezing cold all the time. And so it's a celebration. And the second real purpose is to build community, to just get people together from all parts of our community into one area, simply eating together. I'm preaching to the choir, the magic of people coming together and eating together. And so that's really it. We're trying to build community. And then the call to action is an engagement piece. We want to raise awareness around the importance of building community food systems and understanding food systems, like the history of food in our place, and education also just from the many event speakers and workshops and things that we do. And so every year we choose a theme, and our approach to the theme is a little bit of a reverse engineering thing, probably because it's a less work, but we'll narrow down a list of keynote speakers that we want to speak. And from there, we'll see who we can get, and then we'll work with a theme on that. So we'll kind of have a general idea of different themes that we want to go with, but that's really how we've been doing it in the past. And that saves a lot of work because we don't have to just keep working with, you keep trying to find the exact right person. We kind of adjust a little bit of the theme to who we can get that obviously aligns with our values, and that might also have a draw. So this event, we're working towards growing this thing so it becomes not just a local event, which it already is, but that it brings people from around the Rocky Mountain West, so it's more regional. And in order to do that, we'll pick a theme, like I was mentioning themes a moment ago, that does have it does need to resonate with Rocky Mountain West a little bit. And so last year, our theme was reconnecting to Native American foodways and cuisine. And that was really well received. And I think we'll probably do a little bit more of that this year. There's just so much when we think about the heritage of where we live up in the mountains. It's a ski resort town, but there's everyone says there's a ranching heritage here. It's all about cattle ranching, but that was, what happened before that. So that was really what we're talking about, the thousands and thousands of years of people living here and how they ate. So we got to bring in Sean Sherman for that. That was really exciting. And this year we are honing in on our keynote, and we're thinking that our theme will be around food justice, but that is to be determined. But as you can see, planning is already taking place, and the event is in October. So we start way in advance. We probably should have started sooner. Our audience, also it's the Rocky Mountain West, but a big piece of what we've deliberately decided to do was to try to make this as open to anybody from a cost point of view. So we have a lot of free and low cost activities and workshops involved with the festival, and we have a sliding scale payment system for the keynote speaker. Cool. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I'll run through some photographs to give you an idea of the event and hopefully touch on some of the aspects of events that Mara, you wanted us to talk about. But then I just stuck a big laundry list at the end of things that I hadn't, in case I hadn't thought of them during this conversation. So this event, it can be a beautiful fall day like you're seeing here in October, or it can be snowing. So we do choose the date specifically around when we can get grant funding. The event is funded by a travel and tourism grant primarily. We have other funding partners that I can talk about in a little bit, but this is tourism, and they want to drive tourism in the shoulder seasons. Here in our tourist community, the summer and the winter are busy, and then the spring and the fall are less busy. So we have to wait until at least October 1st to run this event. And so we do it at this place called the Center for the Arts. You see the giant field outside. A lot of it takes place outside, and some of it takes place inside. The giant tent is where we run a farmer's market, and then a big lunch the following day. And then there's on the lower left, there's a check-in tent, and the other tents you'll see are for workshops and different workshops and presentations. All right, next slide. Cool. So there's some of our folks getting ready for the event at our check-in tent. And on the right, you'll see our festival schedule. So we had these printed up on small brochures for people to have, or we also had large boards with these kind of around the event, and it was online as well. And so if you were to Google Farm to Fork Festival Jackson Hole, you'd see that we have we made a website for the event. So we have our Slow Food and the Tetons website, but we also have an event website. And we use Squarespace for that. And was kind of hilarious because when we first looked at that, they had some different templates, and one of them was for basically the exact event we were running. So we didn't have to do too much, that was already all set up. It was kind of hilarious. But we found that to be a really user-friendly a platform to run this event and to do ticketing and to integrate different aspects of what we needed to do. So it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday affair. Most of everything happens on Saturday, and I'll kind of run through this as we go through the slides, but we can always go back to this if anybody wants to see kind of the entire layout. But yep, next slide. That's great. The farmers market is kind of goes on throughout the entire day on Saturday. It's under a giant tent in case it's snowing. We work with, I think, 35 or so producers to do this, and we do, as an organization, run farmers markets throughout the entire year. So we're already set up to do this. But it's I've heard a lot of talk about the importance of partnerships and working with local producers, and like to I can echo that. We bring in producers from what we call local is 100 miles away, which is a little different if in maybe the Central Valley, California, or out in Vermont, but local is 100 miles and regional is 250 miles for us. And so we bring in local and regional farmers to sell at the market, and they all make a pretty good amount of money. It's a big big stock up. Everyone's stocking up. It's kind of the last farmers market of the year. And so you see people shopping there. We do a series of cooking demos and workshops. So there's, I think we did those in the morning and then in the afternoon on Saturday. And so the workshops were anything from vermicomposting to urban hydroponic farming to natural dyeing fabrics, introduction to beekeeping. We had a wild edible hike, etc. And so you'll see some of some food demos here. And so this is, I think, one of the partners. Who's that? Next is one of our partners from the Wind River Reservation, and that's Sean Sherman doing his workshop. So he was our keynote, but he was nice enough to also do a couple of cooking demos. And so there he is outside freezing, but he's making it happen, doing a cooking demo. And so, yeah. And so some of our other workshops, you see a young person doing a pizza making workshop there. We had a beekeeping workshop. Lower left is this amazing guy named John Myzinski, who has more knowledge of wild edibles and foraging than anyone I know in the Rocky Mountain West. And he has, this is sort of a sidetrack, but he has a great project where he's interviewing tribal elders across the tri-state area here, and just retaining as much possible information as he can. And he sees that's his table on the right, where he just has some examples of things that are edible out here in the Tetons. So workshops, I guess, yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about those. Those take, I think we did 15 workshops, and they take a lot of planning and preparation, and getting those onto our website is a big lift. Figuring out whether they're free or they're, $10, $20, $30 to attend. That's part of it as well. What else goes into the workshops? On the day of, we have to have one volunteer, basically is in charge of each workshop, and they're in charge of making sure that we have getting all the supplies, some sort of our central tent, and bringing those out to where the workshop is, whether it's an off-site location, in a kitchen at a restaurant in the area, or under one of those tents. They're sort of the workshop presenters, key point of contact before the workshop, during the workshop, and after the workshop. And so they're also tracking the signups. Let's say an event has 12 signups, and we have 10 signed up leading up to the event. We'll try to get 2 more signed up under the tent, and so this person has the sign up list, and they'll make sure that people are getting to the right place, and that we have the right people under the tent. So there's a lot of volunteer coordination that goes into the workshops, but they're super well received. If we get the workshops out on the website maybe a month before the event, they all kind of fill up, and we're learning which ones are the most popular. This year, we were surprised that natural fabric dyeing was the most popular workshop. That was pretty cool to know about. Didn't know that was such a popular thing to do. All right, next slide. This was new last year. We had a storytelling session. So we asked some tribal elders from the Wind River Reservation is nearby Jackson, Wyoming, and it's made up of 2 tribes. It's the Eastern Shoshone and the Northern Arapaho. There's quite a story behind why they're both there, and it's I don't think I'm the right person to tell that story, but it's worth looking into. And we had members from both of their tribes show up and spend about an hour and a half telling stories. And we had originally thought this was going to be a 20-person workshop, but we just kept getting more and more signups. So we had to move it into an indoor venue, and there's maybe 100 people in that room. It was pretty amazing to hear, and we recorded it. But each of these folks kind of took turns telling stories, traditions around food, and stories around food, animals, and they just sort of we gave them, carte blanche, just whichever story you'd like to go with, and they sort of worked with each other and made it an amazing aspect of our event. So I think that was something we'll repeat next time this year. Cool. Okay, so that brings us to Sunday. So I'm kind of jumping back and forth because we'll go back to Saturday in a minute. Sorry about that. But on Sunday, we did an amazing double event, which we never tried before. It was a big experiment, and I love these crazy chaos experiments. They're really fun to do. But we had Rise and Brine. So at around 10 in the morning, we set up a bunch of tables under the big tent. We put out a ton of root vegetables, and as you can see, some cabbages there, and we had stockpiled these from a lot of local farmers, so hundreds and hundreds of pounds of these things. And we just invited, I think there was maybe 60 to 80 people that showed up for this one to come out and just preserve. We had 3 basic recipes, 2 sauerkraut recipes and a pickling recipe. And we just had recipe cards sitting on the tables and 3 or 4 floaters that kind of knew what they were doing, and asked everyone to bring their own cutting boards and knives. And we tried to get waivers signed, but we didn't get them all signed in time, but we didn't lose any fingers either. So we everybody chopped for about an hour and a half. And the idea was to take a few jars home and to donate a few jars. And we were going to find a great home for those donations, but everybody was so excited they took all the jars home. So we'll reevaluate that part of the event. But that was a really fun, the entire community just coming together to put up food for the winter. That was the idea, and it worked. And hopefully we can do that again next year. And then right directly after that, okay, there's some more slides of that Rise and Brine. Okay, directly after that, we did a signature piece of our event, which is a free community lunch with 500 people. And in the past, we've done this buffet style where people walk up with a plate, or during COVID, they had a box and they all sat kind of on their own or in their own pods with family and friends and enjoyed this locally sourced meal. But we tried to get everyone to sit down together. And this is, you can see it sort of worked, but we had several hundred people kind of showing up at different times during the hour rather than when we wanted them to show up right at the beginning. So we had family style food set out for everybody. We worked with 6 restaurants, and we helped them to source local ingredients, and they all cooked dishes for this. And we had a whole horde of volunteers helping to organize this part of the event. And then we set all the food out on the table and just let it rip. From right where the photo's taken, there's a stage, and we could make some announcements from the stage. But it was a pretty chaotic situation, but everybody really enjoyed the lunch, and I think most of them knew it was local food, and it was a great vibe under the tent. This was Sunday afternoon after the entire event, so our entire staff was totally fried. So this is a little bit fuzzy in my brain, but it was an amazing way to end the event, just a community gathering with everyone eating together, and it was free. Cool. Back to Saturday night. Here's our keynote. This is Sean Sherman. On the left, this is just beginning his speech. If anyone's ever venturing into big event territory and they need a keynote, he did an amazing job. Upper right is him doing the double thumbs up after he was done speaking, and we did a book signing. And he really spoke about pre-contact food, and then how the food system changed for his community throughout colonization, and how that how that plays out today. And it was a very heavy topic. A lot of people in the audience didn't know just what it was like for his grandmother, for example, to go through all that. And it was super impactful, and everybody came away, I think, wanting to learn more. But also such an important piece of our own food history was what happened before folks settled out here. What was pre-contact food, and how do we bring some of that back appropriately? There's a lot of food out there that we're not, that's growing all around us that we don't even know is food. So that was an amazing piece of the event. We were so happy to have him. All right, next slide. Cool. Here's some of our team. We have a staff of 5, including me. So that does make it a lot easier to run an event that's big when you have a staff. But also it's exhausting. It seems like an insane thing to do. After the event every year, we all look at each other and say, why the hell did we do that? It's hard, but it's also really rewarding. We need to figure out a way to make it less work, or to maybe just have more staff come in. I'm not really sure, but it's there they are smiling. I think that's day 3. Everyone's delirious. But here's a few other tidbits to add. During the market, the farmers made a good amount of money. They made 25 grand altogether on food. We had 70 vendors. That's the farmers that were at the market. That's the 15 folks who did the cooking demos and the workshops. Those are the presenters. And we had around 2,500 to 3,000 attendees. And we would just go through the little clicker and during certain parts of the event, just try to click the amount of people and make a guess, and then do that every hour, and just that's our best way to do it. There wasn't really an exact way for us to know how many people showed up to the market itself, because that's really the biggest draw. And then besides that, we could count workshop attendees and attendees to the keynote, but a lot of it was just for the farmers market, which there was also prepared food at the farmers market. So people just came out and enjoyed the day. And a lot of volunteers, those 40 volunteers are, worked throughout that weekend, 2-hour shifts. Some of them did 2-hour shifts, but it takes a lot of people and a lot of coordinating. And so you can see by the next little bit is that we, not including staff time, the event cost 51 grand and we brought in 40. And that's including grants, business sponsors. We had several business sponsors, with a big grant from the Travel and Tourism Board, one other smaller grant, and then some program generated revenue from vendor fees, from ticket sales. But yeah, we lose money on the event, but the purpose of the event isn't to make money. It's what I said earlier. We have a great collaboration with Slow Food USA on marketing. This is just sort of I don't know how much I'm supposed to talk about this. I don't think it's any secret, but I think it's just sort of a side thing that they're helping us with. We give Slow Food USA a certain percentage of our travel and tourism grant, and you all help us with some marketing leading up to the event. And that's been amazing in the past. And I think we hope to continue to do that. We work with Pride of Bristol Bay. I only mentioned that because I know some other chapters are also working with these folks. This is a salmon fisherman up in Bristol Bay, Alaska, who has a buying club, and it's a great way he's a great partner. They're a great partner, and it's a great way to run small events around salmon. And maybe I know they have connections to Slow Fish as well. We try to do a zero waste event. We've been doing zero waste events for maybe 5 or 6 years, and so we have composts and recycling, and we try to create absolutely no trash. And on the day of the event, we do a pretty good job, but there is some trash created behind the scenes from the restaurants and whatnot. Oh, and during the event on the third day, we also have a private meeting. So it's a cool time for us to pull together local electeds from our town council and from our county commission, leaders in private businesses, like at our hospital, the school system, the ski resort, to all come together and talk about changes to the food system locally during this event. And so we have a private meeting, and we get some good work done there as well. So things I didn't quite mention yet that I realized that I maybe should have. We do work with a hotel, and we offer discounts to folks who travel and say they're here for the Farm to Fork Festival, and that's a great partnership. And well, there's more I can say that I haven't a note over here, but I feel like I've just thrown a lot of information out there, and it's a great event. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Scott. Wow, what an undertaking. And I'm super inspired, and I hope everyone here can feel the weight and the work that goes into something this huge. And I think chapters that are very established and have staffs or have large boards can really take on something like this. But I hope we are seeing too that there are elements in all of these larger events that could just be standalone little events. You could pluck out a keynote speaker event and just have a speaker session. You could do the Rise and Brine as a session, as a whole event. It doesn't have to be part of a festival. So hopefully you're getting some inspiration from all the components of these large events too, especially chapters that might not have the bandwidth to take on a giant festival or a really big in any kind of gala or anything like that, or street fair even. But all the elements that you all have presented today are super inspirational for even small. I can see how they can be applied to small chapters as well. We are at time. So I'm going to throw a bunch of words at you, and actually all of this is encapsulated in a doc. So you don't have to feel any pressure to absorb any of this information just now, but I wanted to provide some opportunities and resources to everyone who attended today. You probably heard us mention the Plant to Seed campaign at the State of the Snail yesterday. The focus this year of that campaign is greens. 2 opportunities for chapter activations around greens will be in September and October around collard and chicory. So we're going to have a collard week in September and a chicory week in October. This is still kind of coming together. We were several months away, and I'm getting all of the partners aligned that are going to be helping with these activations, but I just wanted to give you a snapshot of the many ways you could engage with a national campaign this year. So here's what I'm thinking for a Chicory Week and a Collard Week, and we'll use the sort of the same format. So as a chapter, depending on your bandwidth, if you wanted to participate in this national campaign, you could host all of Collard Week and really do all of these activations every day of the week. Or if you want, you really identify, maybe you're a small chapter, but you have a really powerful Snail of Approval program. Maybe you just want to rally around the Snail of Approval Day. You know, you don't have to do everything to participate in Collard or Chicory Week. So this doc is in the folder on the network drive that I mentioned. And I think Dion, maybe you could drop the link if you haven't already. That all of this information is in that doc. And also just to remind you that there's a couple, that Negroni Week is happening again this year, also in September. September is a big month because we also have our membership drive in September. So, you know, there's a chance that Collard Week might move into August. I'm talking with growers and just to see if that makes sense. But just to sort of spread out the crazy slow food programming situation this year, I think we have a little bit of time. So stay tuned. Dion did put the calendar in the drive, or sorry, in the chat for you to remind you when dates are, and that's a living calendar. So as the dates change, I'll update it there so you can see the update. And obviously we'll let you all know. But Negroni Week's happening in September for sure. That's a solid date. It's the Chicory and Collard Week's dates that might change. Probably Collard is the only one that might change. But Negroni Week is a way to really engage your Snail of Approval awardees in, you know, crafting a Negroni. There's a certain amount of proceeds from Negroni Week that come to Slow Food USA, which is really exciting. And that'll help us create these hospitality grants that we mentioned yesterday. More to come on that. Slow Food International started crafting that grant program for us. So once we know what that looks like, we'll roll it out and let you all know how to get hospitality grants out to your networks. And then that would sort of tease the Chicory Weeks and the Chicory Focus in October. As I mentioned, there's going to be a resource. Dion just dropped the link to the network Google Drive. You can access the network Google Drive with your slowfoodusa.org email. Please sign in to Google with that email for your chapter, and you can access this folder. There's an MOU template, a memorandum of understanding. So if you have partnerships for your events that you want to really outline what the relationship is, this is at least an example for how to do that. There's a photo release form, a waiver template, and then the one pager that I'm describing, which has all of this Chicory Week and Collard Week information for y'all. Thank you so much for your attention. It's a lot to ask to have y'all come together on a Saturday in the middle of the day, but I super appreciate your attention, your amazing questions. Hopefully that you feel like you've come away with some inspiration for gathering some more this year, and you have leaders that you can ask questions of. You can ask the national office if you've forgotten who was here. We can connect you, and also check out that folder in the drive to get some resources. Dion, what's coming up the rest of the weekend? What do we have next?
Definitely. So next you have yours truly alongside Dan Miller, and we'll be talking about EIJ within the network. And that will be the end of today's sessions. And then tomorrow we'll be hopping in with Brian Solom and Micaiah to discuss communications and how to get the word out for all the work that you all are doing. And we'll be wrapping up this weekend's Winter Leader Summit with Patricia Hennessy talking about fundraising, developing relationships, while also developing some funds for your chapter's work too. So we are just over the midway point of the weekend. A lot of really amazing information has been shared and conversations have been had. And we're looking to continue those conversations over the next day or so.
Amazing. Well, thank you once again. I hope that you guys know that we're here to answer questions for you as we go. And I hope to see you at other sessions this weekend. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.